Today we're going to be looking at the Onkyo stereo cassette tape deck TA-RW11, and specifically how to get to the drive belts for each deck. First and foremost, remember to unplug before you begin digging around on the inside to reduce the risk of shock. Before we get started, I'm going to recommend some sort of cataloging system so that you remember where the screws go for which part. For instance, I have taken the sticky note and folded it into an envelope shape, and then I was able to write on it where these screws go. We're going to start by removing all the screws of the chassis. There should be 5, 2 on either side and 1 in the back. Then simply remove the chassis top by lifting up slightly in the back, sliding backward so that it comes out from under the lip of the faceplate, and lifting carefully out of the way. I'm going to be careful of the components inside. Next, you're going to want to unscrew this faceplate. There's 3 screws on top and 3 screws on bottom, 6 in total. Next, remove the faceplate carefully by pulling it forward. You might need to lift the machine up slightly or pull it forward off the desk and remove it slowly. On this model, if you need to remove the bottom plate, there are 8 screws around the perimeter. 2 on each side, 3 on the back, and 1 in the middle. But if you're only repairing certain parts of the machine, such as the faceplate or parts of the deck in front only, there are access holes that have been punched to access those components without removing the bottom plate. When you remove the last screw from the bottom plate, it may fall away on you, so take care. Hold it in place when you remove that last screw. Simply remove and place in a safe place. And there you have. Next, we're going to remove the control panel by removing the 4 screws, 2 for each bay on top, here and here. And then there are 4 screws on bottom as well, evenly spaced. Here, 2 in the middle, and 1 on the end again. I prefer to start from the bottom so that when I turn the machine over to undo the screws from the top, the panel won't fall. Before we continue, you're going to want to remove the faceplate of each tape bay by pressing eject, grabbing firmly on either side of the faceplate and just sliding it up. Now they are specific as to the function, as you can see here, but they are labeled tape 1 and tape 2, so no need to worry about putting it in the wrong place when you put it back together. To be able to take off the control panel, you're going to want to loosen the deck screws that I will show you after this. But first, you're going to want to remove 2 screws right here under the input level. There's a screw here and a screw there you want to remove first. Now you can simply remove this plate like this, put it in a safe place. These also pull out. If you slide them to the middle and grab them both securely, they'll pull out, as well as the meter bar. Just a thin piece of metal there. Now we have the machine on its side. We're going to continue removing screws from the face panel, control panel. Behind the power button, there you can see back there, that top hole, I removed a screw. And there's one just like it on the very bottom being the right side. So you get some light down there, right there in the corner. I'll have to remove those. We're also going to have to remove this nut here around the headphone jack and these nuts up here in order to be able to pull that panel off safely in order to get to the tape bays themselves. Now if this seems a little bit crazy to you, guess what? It is. You got a lot of pieces, parts to remember. So I'm going to remove the power button, and for simplicity's sake I'm going to remove the rod as well. Whoop. This time the holder for it came off the button itself down inside. That just simply holds the rod securely, like that, to which the button attaches. And I would store it just like that somewhere. And simply grab a hold of these buttons and pull them off, if they will come off. And this eject button right here actually has a T on the back of it. I'll show you, but you'll need to rotate it 90 degrees and pull it out. It's got a bunch of goo on it, but it's got that T key on it so that it'll stay in place when you're trying to put the panel back on it. Sorry, is that not in focus? There we go. So, and you can see in the hole that came out of it's keyed, so this would go in one way, and then it can stay in place when you put the panel on. Pulling on it now. Pulling it. We gotta put that greasy thing somewhere safe. Just wanted to take a moment to talk about some tools. All I have here is simply a pair of needle nose pliers. I don't have all of Onkyo's cool tools. And on this particular nut, which is on this jack, I just had to loosen it a very little bit and it would spin off with my finger. So here, again, I'm just going to loosen a little bit and see if I can get that off with my finger. Nothing special, nothing fancy, just a little bit of elbow grease to get these controls off. But again, they're very delicate on the back, so be gentle. After you have all those pieces taken off of the control panel, it seems like it should come free, but it doesn't quite right away. And it's because there's a notch right here in the side support of the chassis that comes up over this plastic part. So I've loosened this one. You can see everything's going to fall apart as soon as I pull that out. But simply remove that from both sides and I think it should be home free. Now that the chassis is loose from the control panel, you can slowly rotate it from the bottom to the top upward. And components will start to come out of the holes that they're in. On the side, you'll have to be careful. There's a little belt here that controls the counter on top. So you'll want to remove that counter from the wheel you see there. Right there, back there. You can slowly roll that up and place it on top and your decks are kind of free. I know at this point it looks a little bit terrifying having all these wiggly things around, but it will be okay, and we need to press forward. So, we're going to have to get some, if you can find a way, feel free, you can stick a needle down there and pop that open and reuse it, or go purchase some new zip ties, and which is what I'm going to do, or I think I have some already. So you're going to clip that so you can release the tension on these two wires, the red and brown here that are connected to this circuit board. We're releasing that because we're going to want some room to wiggle. This has not a whole lot of play, and we're going to need to look all over it to get that belt in, the old one out and the new one in. So you're going to need to unplug this part, this connector, and this connector, and any other wires on this particular tape bay should be free enough to allow us to move it around to get that belt in. So the best way to do this sometimes is to get a small flathead screwdriver and just begin gently prying at the edges a little bit. I would try grabbing it with two hands originally, and if it'll move, wiggle it back and forth like that until it's removed. See if I can turn on my light here a little bit. So wiggle it back and forth a little bit until it'll remove like that. That worked really well. If it doesn't, you can always get a small flathead like this. Let's say it's back in. And just begin working it a little bit. Just a very little bit. Very gentle. We don't want anything to break. We don't want to cause more problems. This is already scary enough. You'll notice there's a clip right here as well. I neglected to mention. It's best to pull that out second. Maybe this one first. This one second. This one whenever. But if you can pull this one out before this one, you can actually get your fingers on either side of it and begin to pry it up a bit. Alright, and work it side to side until it pops out. Nice and slow. Now with all those removed, I'm able to swing this bay away a little bit. Zoom out a little bit for you. I'm able to swing that away. There's still wires connected over here. I think I've got enough room now I can work with this enough. if needed, you could continue removing some wires, but I believe some of these are soldered in, so it might be kind of difficult. But there should be enough play that you can work with that now. Now if you flip the bay over and loosen this screw right here and this screw right here, I'm just suggesting loosening right now. If you pull this apart a little bit, you can see that there's a gap right there. Yay, we love a gap, because I think we can get the belt off down there and back on around there, hopefully. But you need to get it around this drum, and then it's going to rest on top of this drum. This is the bottom. It needs to be on top. And indeed, as soon as I pulled this apart and was able to get the, you see how these move a little bit freely? They move a little bit, and they have that gap below that we just showed you. There's a gap in there. As soon as I was able to get the belt down around the bottom of that, it pulled right out. Okay, there's your old belt. It looks okay, but it's actually starting to get a little sticky, and it's very loose. Sometimes when you stretch these belts, you can see the cracking that is starting to happen on some of them, like a dryer belt, but not this one. So you can see here we got our replacement belts. You can see it's all blown out. Let's see here. Alright, our replacement belts. I think they gave us an extra one for the counter. This thin one there. And then they gave us the two, one for each tape bay that is flat. I'll pull them out here so you can see a little better. So you can see this one is, this is the new one. Nice and round. And here is the old one. Nice and floppy. So this new one is actually feels much more rigid and a little bit thicker. And this old one just so floppy and feels actually quite a bit thinner. Yeah, smooth. And this one's actually almost a little sticky tacky. So that's your difference there. New belt on the left, old belt on the right. So remember that we had to make a little space here. We undid these screws just slightly, this one and this one. Just slightly. I want to take anything more apart than we have to. And if you open that up just slightly, there's a little gap in there. You can move this back and forth, and the belt will slide down in or slide out, depending on what you're doing. So, I guess all that's left is you're going to go around this drum, by the way, so you need to be very careful. Slip it down in and maneuver it with whatever tools you have best that are not going to damage the belt or the components inside the tape bay here. You're going to go around this one over the other side of this one, and then we'll deal with how to get it down around the motor shaft itself later. But basically the hard part is getting it around this one. After that we can tighten this up and make sure it's all working properly before we put everything back together. Okay. My guess is if we can get it close by, open this up just a smidgen and work it down in there. I don't want to go over that shaft. That's not so fun. Might be as simple as that. Oop, don't go down over the shaft, I said. No, not quite as simple as that. Another little tool here I'm using. It's this flat, super flat thing. Might help. I just want to work the belt down gently. Gently. You can see I've got it down. You can't really see. Down in there. Let's see if we can adjust this light a little bit. And I just got it around. It's actually fairly smooth as long as you have something long like this. I'm just going to rotate this way to make sure the belt goes all the way around the drum like it should. I think we're in a good position to tighten this up. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten this up. So I don't want the belt to slip down around that anymore. Tighten this back up. Whoop. That feels almost tight. Make sure I don't squish any wires. Okay, So that is done as far as that goes. And I got my belt around that first bit. So we'll need to flip the tape babe back over. Now does it look like it's making sense? Not a whole lot of room to work with these other wires that are attached, but just enough. There we go. You can see that strip of black down there on the mid to right side. That is the belt. Right down there. That's the belt. And it's supposed to come over this drum. And then over here, if I can do this without messing it up too much. On this side you see the brass barrel shape on the shaft of the motor. It needs to go around that eventually. There's other motors here for fast winding, and this one is for play, and they must have separated those for a reason. Others use gears to downshift the speeds from rewind to play and fast forward, things like that. So now we're gonna just get that belt up over this drum, and then hopefully we can carefully stretch it out over this barrel that's attached to the motor. So I'm just going to carefully lift that up a little bit and put it in place. I'll probably need 2 tools. Right now the whole bay is resting on it, so it didn't come out very easily until I lifted it up. So I'm just going to lift that up. And now you can see it coming up over here on this side. I'll zoom out just a tiny bit. So now it's coming up on this side a little bit. I'm going to use these are really tiny tweezers but if I lift up, I'm just going to, just so I don't lose a hold of it, I'm going to gently squish that, lift this up so I can pull it as far out as possible, and then lay it down again, right in place. So now, this is going to be the tricky part, because the old belt was so nice and easy to manipulate. Maybe not nice, but easy, because it was so floppy. And now I'm realizing just how far we have to stretch to get it on. I need a little better angle even. Let's see what I'm talking about. I'll have to take this off. Whoa, going free. Alright, so down in there, see the belt up to the one side. Get some light down there. Yeah, there's a belt right at the top of that metal square. It looks super bright. We got to pull it this way over that brass barrel. So we're going to work on that without everything in the way. Alright. I'll just take the wide angle. Put the barrel in view though. So I'm hoping I can use some of these tools and they'll be blunt enough to not damage it. This is actually working really well. This last method I just tried. Oh, I can just pull it just a little bit more. I don't pull it too hard. I want it to actually work. There we go. That actually worked, and it feels really good on the motor. I'm guessing it's going to take a little bit of rolling to get it in place on the other. If you can see here, down in, so get that light in the right place. The belt isn't quite where it's supposed to be on the drum, but as I roll it, as I roll the motor shaft, it's going to eventually get into place. See, that's going far out. But eventually it will be in place. You can kind of see it moving on this side a little bit. That looks like it's stabilized where it's rolling in the right place on both drums. Whew. We're gonna call it good for a minute. So now I'm gonna replace connections here. So we've got a little power here to these LEDs in front. We're gonna plug back in. If you can't get a good handle on it, sometimes it's okay to put it back with a little flathead screwdriver or something like that, so you don't mangle the wires. Just gentle, I would say. Everything is slow and smooth. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast, right? If you want to go fast, just remember that. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Press down evenly, slowly. So this one, again, we're going to line it up and then try to push evenly on both sides or rock it back and forth like this, but more gently. Alright, so I think everything's in place for that. No other chords I did, no other things I undid. Remember over here I had to cut a zip tie to get this one unplugged. So I bought some new ones and I'm just going to replace that. Just goes right around this bracket here on this side. Whoop, which you cannot see. Right here, that hole goes right there and wraps around these. Make sure you remember which components go first. This one, and this one, and then this one. You can wrap them all up here with the zip tie, nice and tight. Because I'm a slight glutton for punishment, just kidding, because I want this to work properly, I'm going to do the next tape bay here. Also because it might be clear as we do too how this goes. So this one's a little more complicated because I've got this wiring here that's hanging up on this ground cable. There's a ground cable going here from the chassis to the tape bay. So I'm going to undo this screw so it's a little bit easier. Maybe. Now I'm going to put that screw back very soon, so I'm going to carefully remove it if it will. Put it somewhere safe, and then I can manipulate these wires a little better. Alright, then once again I'm going to remove this clip, this connector, and this connector, and we'll see from there what else we need to do, but I think that'll give us enough wiggle room. So again, grab on both sides. I would work it back and forth. And if it's not moving, like this one is not moving so well, it's starting to move that little chip set underneath. So there's a slight gap between those. I'm just going to put the screwdriver in and work it back and forth slowly. And if one side starts to pop up like this one is, it's starting to pop up. See if I can make that even more clear. Yeah, there we go. There's a little bit of detail. Like this side is popping up a little bit more, so I'm going to go over to this side and start removing it just so it's even. If that doesn't work, you can keep going with the screwdriver, I guess. So that's working a little better. So getting to focus. I was able to pry it a little bit more by going like this, working it back and forth, and now we're free. Alright. Next one over here. It's a little over there, but we're going to grab this and try to put our fingernail on this little L-shaped thing, so we can try to pull it out. It's coming out on the one side again, so I'm going to try to work it on this other side. There we go. Very good. 2 fingers. Work it back and forth. I'll just say if this one doesn't come. There we go. Just has never been removed, so there we go. Yep. We're very free. There's some connectors that go over here, but I think there's still enough room. The thing that's hanging us up are these shorter cables over here. And you can see here, the old belt is still on there. So let's get this in a position where we can keep working on it. This one is proving to be a little bit more difficult to rotate all the way upside down and have it stay nicely like the other one did. Just there's a few more things attached in different places that make it a little bit more difficult. So, including how these are wrapping around. So I'm going to kind of hold it with my hand and put it back in place if we are. I'm not going to set it down on other the components over here because that would not be a good idea. So if I need to set it down, I'm going to set it back down, at least partially, back in its normal orientation. I'm just going to loosen this one again a little bit. Not all the way, just enough to move the plate out of the way. And again, right here on this side. This is identical so far to the other one. Should be. I think there's only a few electronic differences between these two. And then wiggle it a little bit. I think this can come out a little bit more. But I think the key is this side, where the belt's got to go actually around this drum. It goes around this drum and rests on top of this drum. This is the bottom side, but it rests on top of it on the other side. So it's more important to work on this side so you can get the belt around it. I'm just going to kind of slip that down this way, rotate the drum, and make sure that we're not sure what else is hanging up there. It's really loose and gooey, so I'm going to look on the front side and see what's going on. So it looks a little crazy. Oh, it's still around the shaft of the motor. Right there. Oh, you can't see it from here. Right in there. It's still too hard to see. It's not wide enough. Yeah, so you can see it right down there around the shaft of the barrel of the motor. So I'm going to pull that out, and then we'll be able to move it. I'm going to get this back in place. There we go. You gotta watch it from an angle. Maybe this is not a good idea. Get you at a good angle here. There we go. A little better. So yeah, I gotta remove it from that barrel carefully. Where's my tweezers? There we go. Actually, when I opened this, they were both hanging off in the exact same place, just hanging off down here. And I had used it just a year before. But it worked fine, actually. But in that time, something had happened. I don't know. See, now the belt pulls just fine. As long as the belt comes down here on the bottom of this, there's a space. Up here, there's a shaft, and you can't pull it around. That's why you have to loosen that plate. It's because there's no room up here. It's a solid line. But under here is free, so you can put the belt around that. It's going to be a little bit trickier. Tool belts. I'm curious if these are the same kind of length here. Let's see if we pull them out. Pull them both straight. One's even just a slightly bit looser than the other one. Okay. Get that other fancy belt out. Alright, so here we have the new belt. And it's going to be trickier since we can't lay this all the way down nicely like we had done the other one. Hopefully it won't be so complicated now that I have it figured out a little bit. Now I'm able to rest it a little bit up here on the control panel. I'm just going to loosen that plate a little bit again. And it's actually easiest to kind of lay it down there. Easiest, ha. Maybe what I'll do is put my finger over that, because I really want to put the inside edge down in first. There we go. Just like that. And this flat spudger kind of a thing. Remember this guy? It's kind of flat. It is a little bit pointy, so I'm not ever pushing too hard with that. But I am going to feed it down in there a little bit more. Shaft yet. But I think if we rotate it this way, we might give some luck. If we rotate it this way, there, maybe. Maybe we need to go this way, actually. getting hung up a little bit on this one. It's not where it goes. Goes right between. There we go. See, now we're all the way around the barrel. I can pull it and I can pull it and double check it's spinning, and we're good. Okay. So remember, the step is to tighten these back up so it doesn't flop off the bottom. That would not be fun or exciting. Things happen. Both 2 screws. Just snug. Now before I flip it back over, I'm going to make sure that there are no wires kind of hanging up in weird places like they were last time. Ground wire. Okay. Again, I'm going to work around the camera. I'm going to actually reach from the other side. I'm going to lift this whole tape bay up again, remember, because it's kind of sitting on it. I'm just pulling it through so we can, it'll go over that drum. See that right there? I've got a hold of it. I just need it to be up over, now that's as far as it'll come now. So up over the drum there, right here, and it's going to, so it's going around this drum actually, and it's going to go on top of this drum. And then underneath this piece should go around the shaft of this motor. And I found in my experience that this was a little more round, a little more gentler on the belt than this piece was. It helped to kind of get it into place, but it's kind of sharp as you can see, so I didn't want to do any damage to the belt. So I used the tweezers to get it to a certain point, and so I use the tweezers and this, kind of pushing this from the back over here, and then grabbing it with the tweezers and using them both like kind of like this to pull it forward. And then at that point where I felt like I was comfortable with the tweezers, then I got this underneath it and kind of worked it with around the barrel, the brass barrel right here. Okay. So in case it's unclear, that's what's happening. There we go. That's better for me to see. Maybe not for you to see, but it's kind of in there anyway, so it's kind of dark. Alright, I'm going to see if I can get behind this and grab it with the tweezers as gently as possible. And I'm going to get the tweezers into position, as well as this. Now I can just put it down over the barrel. Oop, don't flip it. I'm going to kind of roll my screwdriver back and forth and let it out. There you go. It's on this barrel. That actually was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. But to me, the scary part is yet to come. Getting everything back in that control panel and plugging it in. Okay. Remember, we had this ground wire here we got to put back. Looks a little bit squirrely, so I'm going to make sure it's a little straighter than it was. And I put our screw in a safe place. So there's our screw. And you'll remember that I make sure no wires are in the way. I'm going to kind of go in reverse order. So I'm going to plug this in again, these 3 connectors, gently, even pressure on all sides. You don't want to bend any pins, then you'll get into soldering later if you do that. So I'm just carefully snapping these back into place. Okay. Sounds good. And then you remember that this ground cable kind of went around here. I don't want to play with too many things and make it better, quote unquote, quote unquote, better than it used to be. I don't want to get into that territory. So I'm just going to put it back exactly as I found it. With new belts though. So I've got the screw here. I go around and cinch it down. It's best to put this through the hole first and guide it down. One down, 30 to go. Okay. So, just going to try to remind myself on the side of this tape deck, right there, there's a little groove that goes onto this board. Okay, same on this side. There's a little groove right there. It's already resting on the board actually. So that's good. I'm going to kind of make sure that all my components are in a good place. I'm going to make sure this component is in place. And actually, I could probably, we could put that, we could have left that on, I think. In other words, is what I'm saying. So I'm going to put it back now. So it looks like it would be easier to deal with if it was on. That nut, I don't know if you can see what I'm doing. That nut for the mic jack is what it is. If you can see that, it's a mic jack. Not easy to see. But we're going to put that back in place and spin it on snugly. And we're going to use our needle nose pliers. Boy, that is just so bright. Just slowly rotate it until it's snug. We don't need any more than just snug. Which it might already be. It may already be snug enough. And that'll be a lesson. Some things like this only need a finger tighten. I'm going to pull this around to here, making sure that nothing is snagging, everything's free. This is back on the board. And just so you know, that groove I talked about earlier, right here, is on both sides. There's a groove on each side, so that they both need to be on the main circuit board as far as it goes. Thankfully I remember to get my little zip tie. Comes pre-bent at Home Depot. I think it was $3 for a pack of like 30. So just going to make sure these kind of sit in an order together. They kind of go like this. As you can see, I'll zoom that back out. The headphone jack, I believe. Yep, headphones, Dolby noise control, and the timer. They all kind of sit like that. So I'm going to kind of make sure that their cords are as close together as possible. Here, right where they were tied up together. Kind of in that fashion. And then go around, make sure that everything's in the bundle before I zip it. It's probably not a big loss if we don't get it right the first time. Okay, before I tighten it all the way, I'm just going to make sure again that everything's kind of sitting nicely together. If you look closely at some of these cables, they have a little squish in them where the previous zip tie was. So I'm going to make sure they're all about the same length as well. They're all about the same distance out. And then I'm going to make sure the top one is a little higher, further out, because it's going to go higher in the set than this one. So maybe in fact I'll leave it just a little bit loose. I prefer to keep things a little tidy, so I'm going to then snip this off. Goodbye. Alright, those look pretty good. And it's just loose enough that I can adjust these cables slightly if I need to. And make sure everything's over here on this side so it's not poking out on the side of this chassis, because eventually we're going to put the top back on. Alright, so back out here. Get a decent angle for you. Make sure again that our bays are on the circuit board. I'm going to slowly rotate this back to where it was before. Carefully work any cables back that need to be adjusted, that need to go around. Actually, I think the tape base peaked up a little bit like this to be able to work back into their housings. And just kind of finagle it as you go. See, this is offset here, so I'm just going to lift it up and work these things around until they're in place. So you can see I'm starting to put these through in that order. The order in which they go. Just generally, it doesn't have to be perfect yet. Okay. The tape deck in place. Okay, this one's really close. I'm going to go over here and make sure this one's really close. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now, I think I'm going to just lift up slightly on the front and make sure that these are in place, because I think what I'd like to do is secure them, but they need to, I think I can secure them on top, which would be the last thing to do, or which would be the last thing to be undone when you're doing it the other way. There's a cable down here. I'll take this off to show you. There's a cable down in there. If I can get the light right. That cable that goes across right there. Don't worry. Right there, that cable that goes across, it was kind of bending this way around, almost in a triangular shape, but it goes at a diagonal across underneath. So it's kind of holding up the tape bay from going in properly. But now it can go in. Just gently. There we go. I'm pulling it forward and kind of resting it, making sure that these holes on top kind of line up. I think we're pretty good. So, I'd like to find the screws, deck screws, top and bottom. There we go. That's what I want. Just going to use 4 of them right now. Leave the rest. I've got these all labeled, so I'm going to dump these out now. I only need 4 because I'm not going to do the bottom part yet until I'm sure that the tape bays are in place on bottom, you know. And I said before that those little grooves that look like this go over the circuit board. I don't think that's possible when you're putting this plate back on, so you gotta, because you have to rotate these up. It's good also to guide them right down to the hole so you don't lose them. Thinking to myself, what are these screws made out of? Something non-magnetic, because I think this is a magnetic screwdriver. But I think if we secure these, the top of this housing, then we'll be able to move the whole thing down into place over the circuit board where it's supposed to go. Let's make sure this is in the right place. I think we'll be good. There we go. Found it. It's satisfying to know that all these holes for the screws put everything in the right place. The other thing to do is to reseat this belt on the counter. So I'll take this off the mount and show you this belt. This belt here was just loose, just hanging loose, and so I had to take it off of this counter bit to. That's interesting. So here, up here, remember this notch fits into place there, and on the other side there's one that comes this way. goes down. So it might be good at this point to put the bottom screws in. Make sure that all the pieces are lined up fairly and squarely. So this chip for the microphone input, this little circuitry under here, goes just on the other side of this. That's why there's this plastic guard, I think, to keep it from shorting out any of these components. Well, this has a notch, that has a notch, and that has a notch that fit over this board, as you can see. Yeah, just like that. And so, now that we've got those in place, I think it would be wise to get these bottom 4 screws into place. If they're not going in, you know you're not lined up quite right. And they will be misaligned just slightly, but if you have to keep them all a little bit loose until they're all kind of set in place a little bit better, then that's okay too, and then you can tighten them all down. These all seem to go in pretty well. Okay, so now that I've got that taken care of, I'm going to look it over and make sure that everything's okay. Okay, so now that's done, I think I'm going to work on these components here. There are 2 screws here that I'm going to put in right here on the end and on this corner. Just right down the corner there, you can see that hole. I'm just going to put those in place now. They secure this housing to the chassis, and screws, it's kind of an interesting place to be, so you might have to hold it with the tweezers while you screw it in. So I'm going to hold that in place with a tweezer until I can get that down in the hole at least. Maybe. Okay, there we go. Easy. Same thing with this, because it's just a weird little place. I like to check things after I'm done screwing something in just to make sure I don't move on to another step before and make it really difficult on myself. So far everything looks good. I'm just going to put these components right here. I can come down a little bit. These components on the side right here in place and secure them. Alright, so we have this one in this place. They both just have little, let's start at the bottom though. I want to get ourselves all confused. Have to go down, and might be better to put this one in place before you screw down the, but you can reach behind and work it into place, I think. Should be fine, but if you have to, I'm going with this. I'm going behind here. Let's see if I can show you. I'm just going behind. You can't see really well, can you? Behind here to kind of put it in place a little bit better. There we go. Now it's sitting down. That's better. I'm going to push it forward while I put the nut in place. In the last one, remember, it was finger tight, but we'll just see how well this space allows me to. I wonder if this will actually help. Get these big tweezers around it. It helps a bit. I can see if I can finger tighten it a little bit. If not, I'll get these bigger needle nose. It'll grasp it without hurting the thing itself, and just tighten it snug. Do the same with these ones. These ones might be a little bit harder. I'll have to maybe put them on like that with my tweezers. Woo, that's tricky. If I hold it in place, so I think I can spin it on. And then maybe I can twist it on now. As soon as I get it snug, then I can reach in there with the needle nose pliers. Just snug. I don't want to crack anything. Same with this. It's easier to hold it with this. It's got a little tension on it naturally, the way it's built. I'm going to hold it from behind again. It's not a big deal. It will go on there by itself, but it might be easier with the... See, I got cross-threaded a little bit here. Yeah, I got this cross-thread still. Alright. Huh. Some days are diamonds. There we go. Went on straight, finally. Just gotta hook it a little bit. And again, once it's snug, I'm gonna put this in here and just turn it a few times until it's snug. And obviously you can follow the step backward. That's actually why I'm doing this step, because you could actually just keep track of it yourself and put everything and just reverse the steps, right? Could be easy, maybe, maybe not. But I'm going through this process just to kind of double check myself on the way we took it apart. I started worrying that it might have been much easier to replace the belts just going this far. But actually I don't think it is, because you've got to loosen that plate to get the belt actually in place behind that first drum. And I don't think it'll loosen without... I don't think you can even get to that plate very easily. Never a bad idea to dust. And also never a bad idea to dust in short bursts. Now we're going to put back these components here on the left again, the knobs and handles for them. So these two had these beautiful pieces. And it looks like I've done it right. It's got three options. We've got Dolby noise reduction, out, B, and C. Dolby B and Dolby C. And then on the top one we have the timer, which in nominal position is off, but left is record and off play. Looks like they're in the right position, provided that these aren't switched this way. Then we also have the eject button for this side. Remember, it's keyed, so we're going to go in this way and then rotate it. That was always fun to get the faceplate on. And then for this one, we're going to, for the power button, we're going to rotate this so we can see what where we're putting this stick. Alright, so remember, we've got a stick that needs to go there all the way across to here, the power button area. So this part of this power button shaft, this part actually comes off and it goes on top of the component inside. But I think it might be easier to leave it on the shaft and take off the power button, and then we'll work on the rest. That white component that you see, where it's where that little black nub goes on, this thing, it goes right on there, but it goes through out here, out the control panel, the control panel bit. So we're going to go backwards. And it looks like, if I observe properly, that it doesn't exactly matter which way this goes, but you can see a hole, and then that way I can grab it on this side. Go up just a little bit. I just take it through backward, I can grab it on this side and make sure that it goes over that white piece. Just like that. You might need to give it a little bit of a snug push until it goes on, then you can try it. On, off. And then replace the power button with the bevel up, I believe. Okay, I'm going to take another look around to make sure I'm not missing anything. I don't have extra pieces, so I'm glad about that. But the next step is to replace all these pieces that go in here. I'm going to carefully put this meter plate back in place, right there. And then carefully poke this into the slot that it was designed to go into. And that'll hold the meter plate in place. I can insert that into its slot. And now you've got input level for the microphone. This has a couple of screws that go on it. It shows you the mic level and which channel you're working on. But it just kind of slips into place. You have to kind of finagle it, I think, to get back into place where it belongs. Yeah, it just kind of snaps. And there's two screws. Kind of just snaps on, but there's two screws. One here, one there. So I'm going to go get those screws now. I'm only doing it like this so you can see. If it was just me, I'd turn it on its side or back or something. I'm just going to get those in a little bit. And then I'll screw them down. I think that's tight enough. Yeah, that's tight enough. Doesn't go in that far. Okay, that was done. No extra parts. Look it over, make sure everything's good. Make sure these components are inside the chassis like they should be. Now the only other parts I have remaining are the faceplate. The lining you see. Faceplate and the bottom plate and the chassis. And since we don't need the faceplate, bottom plate, or chassis for functionality, I'm going to go ahead and test these by plugging it in. Being careful not to touch anything on the inside that shouldn't be touched. And we're going to give it a whirl. Power. I see things lighting up. If I turn the light off, you see glowing lights. Turn it back off. Glowing lights. That's good news. Now we're just gonna try out this deck, I think. Pop. It's nice to know that these eject nicely. Good. Nothing's hung up. Nothing's stuck. I have a little test tape here. I'm going to try. I think it's in reverse mode. I'm just going to pop it in really quick. Look at that. It plays and I have signal. And just to prove that it plays, I'll show you the darkly. Let's see. Oh, a little brighter. You can see the shafts moving there. Little spindles rolling. So we are a success. We have success. We've been successful. Victory is ours. And there you can see it rolling. Smooth. Let's get some light over there. There you go. A little bit of dirt on there. Now let's try the other one. Try this side. Also the plate. I'll be darned. Look at that. It's running and we got some level. A little hot on the left channel. But that's how it was recorded. I'm just happy we have signal. I'd say I'm happy with that, especially since I'm seeing level, so I'm not going to test any further. I'm going to hit stop, take my tape out for safety, just in case something goes weird when I'm putting the faceplate back on. Now we're going to work on getting the rest of this put back together. So, we have the faceplate, and there are 3 screws on top and 3 screws on bottom. One of the bottom plate screws goes right in the bottom here. So I'm going to actually unplug this again, turn the power off. So hopefully this isn't too tricky or wild, but the hardest part was this left side where all these components have to fit through properly. So I'm going to hold this with one hand, try to align. It's really that eject button that's annoying because it's got to line up. But as soon as it does, everything pops into place. And life is good again. 3 on top, 3 on bottom. Alright, let's get these into place. If you have to, you can reverse the screw until it pops. And that'll be where it's designed to grab. it was me, I'd do the edges first, making sure everything's in alignment. And it is me, so I'm going to do that. Oh. This has a little bit of insulation right here, but I can see that this hole lines up and this one does not line up with anything. So I'm going to put this screw right here. Flip it up. Flip it on its end. I'm going to take a look it over, make sure nothing's weird or out of place, and everything actually looks like it's in place. Nothing looks distorted, everything seems to slide. And while I've got it here, the second to last step was to put in the bottom plate, put it in the bottom plate. The edges of this can be kind of sharp, so just be careful. The vent goes toward the bottom, like that. Alright, and you can kind of see where the holes line up for the screws. There's 8 screws. So now I'm going to, remember this panel falls away, so I've actually taken the one screw and put it through the hole and then put it close while guiding it with the screwdriver, like so, and then tighten it down. Then it can kind of hang a little bit while you get the other screws in. Right, so here we go. We're going to put all those screws back in. Remember there's 8 screws. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and this one I've used to secure it down while I work on it. So I'm actually going to go to center here. Make sure. Now this one's a little tight, so I'm going to loosen it so I can adjust this properly. So I think that's pretty good. Get everything in alignment here. Okay, everything looks good still. Nothing looks too weird. Then the last step would be to put the chassis top on. So again, the best thing to do is to line it up like this. This edge slides under, you can tell because it's a little bit dusty or worn. I slide it under, make sure everything's out of the way, and then slowly lower it down. Make sure everything's in place, no electronics are poking out. Looks good. So I've got my 5 screws for that. Okay. There's 2 on each side. And 1 in the back. Just pop those right in. Tighten them down. Other side. One in the back. Right there in the middle. Next thing I'm going to do is take the face plates of each cassette bay and pop them right back onto place. They just will smash right up against there softly. I do it high, then come down, slide on. Click, click, we're good. Next thing to do is to check it with power and test it. So, power on. We got our glowing lights. And you can choose one way, reverse, or repeat. I like one way myself. Anyways, so I'm gonna check this. Take my test tape back out. Side A. double check that it's going to play. We're going to hit play. And by gum, it's working.